Ah, the fires of rebellion and vengeance. There's nothing quite like it. Everyone loves a good rebellion story. Well, maybe not the people in charge who are being rebelled against, but rebellions make for great storytelling. A ragtag group of soldiers taking down the massive empire whose hand stretches over a huge amount of territory is a tale as old as time. We all love a great underdog story, watching the oftentimes less trained or ill equipped rebellion take on the empire and its monumental wealth and access to the best technology. And it just so happens that the game we're going to be talking about today is yet another one of these age-old tales. Welcome back to the channel, Plooper Troops, and if you're new to the channel, welcome to Break the Backlog, the show where I sit down and provide my thoughts, opinions, and personal stories about a particular game that I've been playing. Today we're going to be talking about Unicorn Overlord. This game snuck its way onto my radar right before it launched by way of the JRPG community here on YouTube. I saw many creators talking about how exciting Vanillaware had been in their past projects, and a lot of people seemed to be really hyped to see what this game would bring to the table. It looked like a twist on popular strategy games like Fire Emblem, and early looks showed a story of revenge, rebellion, and a prince taking back his throne. It didn't take much more than that to sell me on the idea, and I bought this game a few weeks after it launched on the PS5. Without further delay, grab a snack, sit back, and relax as we break the backlog on Unicorn Overlord. Unicorn Overlord is a tactical strategy RPG game that was developed by Vanillaware and published by Atlus, making its debut on March 8th of this year. After a violent coup sees his mother fall as she valiantly covers his escape, Prince Elaine is cast out of his homeland of Cornea and flees in the protection of his mother's most trusted man, Joseph. The two live out their next decade training so that they can contest the throne that his mother died defending, and to defeat the evil Emperor Galerius. As Elaine grows from boy to man, he will become the voice and face of the resistance to Galerius' rule, threatening the Emperor through becoming a beacon of hope and reason in a time where violence, chaos, and oppression rule everything. The art style of Unicorn Overlord is one of the things that immediately caught my eye in all of those early look videos that I saw about this game, and it didn't disappoint. This game's stylized art direction in combination with its 2D and sometimes 2.5D perspective make for a charming combination that, while reminiscent of other games that it may have taken inspiration from, does a great job in carving out its own space and being something uniquely beautiful. Starting with the character designs, I found that there was a lot of care put into making each of the main cast identifiable and distinct from each other. Armor styles, weapon types, and body sizes are all ways that the characters are set apart from their peers. The contrast of color here do wonders at making these characters pop against the earthy tones of open battlefields or the gray wash of cobblestone cities that they go to war in. While armor and clothing typically take more realistic hues and shades with browns and steel grays, a wide range of colors was also used for hair and eyes in a true anime art style fashion to give these characters a shot of color and originality. There's also a fair amount of customization in the game. You can edit the appearance of all of the main cast of characters that are in the Liberation using a hand mirror that you can find. It's like a consumable. But you can also enlist new soldiers of the various classes in this game that kind of act as generic stand-ins for the game's colorful cast of characters that you can use to flesh out your squads with multiples of each class. This includes setting their hair, clothing, and armor colors, choosing what attributes they have focused their craft on and will grow when they level up, and their voice. An odd exclusion that I personally missed in this game, however, was the ability to freely name my custom troops to whatever I wanted. This was a bit of a letdown to me, as I love being able to make my friends and family in these sorts of games and send them out into battle, and to include a custom soldier creation option but then limit the naming to a pool of pre-selected names was just kind of lame. It isn't a huge deal breaker for me, and I realize that this is mostly just a me thing, but it was a bit of a disappointment to not be able to do this. However, another massive plus in terms of characters and the visuals of this game are the animations. The combat sequences are so beautifully done, and the animations within these fights are smooth, crisp, and easy on the eyes. I really enjoyed watching the battles play out because of how stunningly fluid they were as the characters took turns lunging, stabbing, shooting, and blocking each other. The top-notch visual quality extends itself to the expansive world of Fevrith as well, with each country our troops bring their liberation efforts to being varied and feeling lived in. As cities are liberated and built back up through delivering needed supplies, they will change in appearance, going from small towns covered in the scars of war to their former selves. Ships reappear in harbors, living quarters are patched to the holes and burns upon them, and the population starts to grow again. These touches are really immersive, and they make it feel like our army is truly making a difference in putting the land back to the way it was before Galerius' conquest. Other well-designed pieces of the world include these beautiful backdrops that represent the battlefields that the war takes place on. These backgrounds change based on the countries and the terrain in which battles are taking place. Whether it be the whimsical forests of Elheim or the shifting sands of Drakenhold, the open fields of the plains or the rain-slick cobblestone of towns and forts as battle takes place in them, the world itself is as beautiful as it is varied. This matters a lot when the battlefield is an ever-present and integral part of the story, and all of the game's voice-acted cutscenes also take place against these very same landscapes and sceneries.
The answer is clear as day now. The path before us is laid bare, and all that remains now is to walk it.
As is with the visuals, the various components that make up the game's audio landscape shine in so many ways. First up is the voice acting, which does feature some solid performances throughout, though there were a few minor things that I noticed that did kind of alter an otherwise flawless presentation. I'll start with talking about the few issues that I had, as the positives here do outweigh the negatives. The main issue I noticed with the voice acting was in the latter portions of the game when the Liberation Army makes its way to Bastorius, home of the anthropomorphic race known as the Bestrels. The voice acting is kind of inconsistent from battle to cutscene. This was mostly noticeable with the Wolf Bestrels, who in cutscenes often had a guttural growl in the back end of their voices, whereas in battle scenes, their voices were replaced with generic human-sounding voice lines.
Looks like the answer's no.
This is a really minor thing, and most people probably won't care about this, but it's just something that my little spicy brain picked up on, and I couldn't unhear it once I heard it. The other issue with the vocal performances in this game is more of a voice line quantity problem that I noticed when going to the various shops in the towns within the game. When buying and selling items, the vendors say the exact same phrases over and over and over again.
But only until you vacate the shop. You may repurchase it, but only until you vacate the shop. You may repurchase it, but only until you vacate the shop.
You may repurchase it, but only until you vacate the shop. You may repurchase it, but only until you vacate the shop.
This one was kind of really annoying when I had to make a lot of transactions in a shopping trip, and oftentimes led to me just muting the game until it was over so I wouldn't have to hear, "The items are here until you leave. You can buy them back until you leave," 800 times. Now, I will say you can kind of navigate around this by just doing all of your transactions in one go, like selling multiple items all at once. But sometimes you forget, you have to go back, and so hearing the same phrases over and over and over again is just like there's only one voice line for each type of shopkeeper, and it got to be kind of annoying. Now, aside from these two issues, however, the voice acting here is pretty solid. The actors had solid direction, and there wasn't any poor performances in my opinion. Each main character has a distinct voice that fits their character design, and I didn't find any of the voices themselves to be annoying. Sure, there's a lot of repeating voice lines in battle when selecting units, or whenever they notice that a fight looks really easy or ominous, but there was enough variation here that it didn't feel at all like the shop owners. Sound effects are also well done, with the metallic sounds of blade hitting armor, arrows whistling through the air and finding that satisfying thunk as they hit their target, and the thunderous thuds of horses galloping into battle were all of great quality.
I've had enough of you!
The soundtrack pumps out some really quality tracks that feature a diverse range of vibes, instrumentation, and themes that align with the places in which they are heard. There's darker tracks like Turbulence, which plays during the prologue when Elaine and his protector Joseph are sent out into the storms to flee Galerius' approach of his home. This effectively set the tone for the dark and tragic night that this would become. The soundtrack manages to evoke a wide range of emotions as well, with songs like Secret Maneuver and Disturbance carrying far more sinister undertones, while softer songs like Majestic and Elaine's theme presenting more beautiful and hopeful feelings. The soundtrack features 89 songs that all have their place within the game, and while there are some repetitive tracks that you're going to hear quite a lot, they sit in the background just enough and are just subtle and beautiful enough that they will marry well with the gameplay and narrative, never stealing the spotlight away from what is happening on the screen. The sound design as a whole is very strong and does a wonderful job at making the world come to life with the sounds of war, with only a few minor annoyances or missteps for me personally. Typically, the gameplay is always the most important part to me, and this is where Unicorn Overlord absolutely shines. This game took a lot of ideas from the strategy and tactical RPG genre it gets its roots from, and builds upon them in a way that makes it feel wholly original and yet still reminiscent of great games past and present. As I said earlier, my opinion of this game does scratch the Fire Emblem itch, and while I have seen other people compare it more to Ogre Battle, Tactics Ogre, or Final Fantasy Tactics, I haven't played any of those games yet, so I can only speak on what I know. In Unicorn Overlord, much of our time is spent leading the liberation across various nations and continents to free their people from the oppression of Galerius and recruit warriors to fight amongst our ranks. These warriors fall into different classes within the battle system, which dictates things like their weapons of choice, skills that they learn, mobility, and offensive and defensive capabilities. These classes were one of the first things that called upon my love of the Fire Emblem series, and yet they built upon the concept in such a well thought out way that I was really impressed with how much depth could be applied to the system to make it something new entirely. This was achieved through taking Fire Emblem's turn-based combat system, in which traditionally each soldier on the battlefield marked one unit in themselves who had their own strengths and weaknesses, and applying layers to the idea. One of the best additions to the gameplay is the ability to not just place a combatant down on their own, but to be able to build squads of them that can cover an array of different combat situations. For instance, glass cannons like the bow-wielding hunter or spell-hurling wizard are no longer in danger of being caught out alone, as they can be paired up with protector units like the heavily armored hoplites who can soak up damage while the wizards and hunters dish out punishment from the back line. These units are divided into 6 slots, 3 in the front row and 3 in the back. The front row is typically occupied with tankier characters or ones with high evasion that can soak up or bait out damage while the damage dealers in the back fire away. At maximum, players can upgrade their units to be 5 character squads, meaning there is a ton of unit combinations that players can implement to find recipes for success. Sometimes a battle that looks impossible can be won and swayed completely in your favor just by moving a character back or swapping 2 characters' positions. And I'm not going to lie, between these formations and the tactics that each unit can be equipped with to optimize their performance, this can be extremely overwhelming. Admittedly, I did not tap into the tactic system very much at all, opting to usually just use the default for most of my units. The system is extremely deep though, and setting up conditions in which units will activate their skills can make a lot of fights turn in your favor. For instance, maybe the enemy squads have a lot of druids, a unit that debuffs its opponents by taking away their ability to crit and lowering their stats. These units are typically in the back row of fighters, and using tactics you can tell your ranged characters to prioritize the back row to take the druids out. There's a lot more you can do with it than that, and I'm planning on using this side of the game a lot more on my next playthrough after I up the difficulty. I'm sure I'm going to need it. Something really quick that I just wanted to note that I thought was really cool was that all of the battles in this game take place on the overworld map. Yes, you still travel around and find secrets and recruit soldiers and explore on the overworld map, but whenever a battle breaks out, it's not some battle combat zone that's generated. It's literally a square cut out of the overworld map that you're traveling on where you take back these towns and things. I just thought that was really cool, and I wanted to mention it before I continue talking about the gameplay. I talked about earlier, one way that we can make our units better is to pair them with other soldiers, but beefing up our numbers isn't the only way to improve our forces. The other way comes in the shape of promoting units to a more powerful version of their class. This can be achieved after the Liberation Army reaches level B in Renown, a point system that grows steadily throughout the game as areas are liberated, towns and cities are rebuilt, enemies are slain, and the story is progressed. Each rank reached will provide opportunities to increase the effectiveness and power of the army. Seeing this included in this title was awesome, as this is a mechanic that is one of my favorites in the Fire Emblem games that I played as a kid. Earning the ability to make a unit look stronger and more badass looking is such a cool feature, and it really gave me something to look forward to when I was earning that renown. Other in-game currency systems that you earn along the way are honors, which allow you to upgrade your unit sizes and classes, and war funds, which the Liberation Army uses to purchase equipment and consumables. Honors are extremely easy to earn once you get to the point in the game where you can unlock repeatable auxiliary battles, and for me I didn't actually know this until later in the game, so it was very useful as a way to get all of my units kind of like maxed out in size, or the units that I wanted to promote, like the soldiers, to get them to the classes that I wanted them to be. As for war funds, you will probably find a ton of those over the course of the story, as finding an effective balance to your units may mean not fully utilizing every potential squad slot at your disposal. This means you'll only really be kitting out select units. The combat system being as deep and customizable as it is in Unicorn Overlord is vitally important, as almost everything that you'll be doing within this game is related to the combat system. When out in battle, the army travels on an overworld map that is massive, really aiding itself to the feel of a huge, drawn-out, global conflict that this war campaign is. Stretching over 5 different nations with their own climates, cultures, and gameplay gimmicks, the world really does feel well realized and thought out. The main adventure in this game involves liberating all of the peoples of Feverth from the control of the Zenoran Empire and the evil Emperor Galerius. This means traveling through the lands in search of towns, cities, and ports that are under Zenoran control to deal massive blows to the structure of control the Empire has built over the last decade. Main story quests often involve larger scale battles where cutscenes reveal plot points, though these cutscenes are not wholly specific to the main story quests. There's also side quests and liberation quests, both of which see the Liberation doing what they do best and, well, liberating, and some of these can include story bits as well, including character backstories about both our units and potential recruits. Essentially, all this boils down to the same concept in terms of gameplay, with some variation here and there, and differences in scale as the main story battles tend to be quite a bit larger, like I said. Outside of combat, there are many secrets to find on the continent of Feverth, in the way of secret challenge battles, churches and cemeteries, chickens to collect, and much, much more. These collections are often just a small distraction away from the main quest line, though some do come in handy, like the aforementioned sigil challenges, which allow you to grind for XP, honors, war funds, and renown in these repeated battles, which can really help when you're wanting to try a new squad out or need to raise some character levels. I found the gameplay overall in this title to be a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed watching the Liberation grow in numbers with the diverse classes, personalities, and playstyles that each new member brought to the table. The strategy here is key, and it's in abundance, and I think that while the mechanics of the game can be a bit deep and overwhelming at first, learning them is very rewarding and a lot of fun, and the game gives you a ton of combat opportunities to test out what you learned or learn new things. At least on the difficulty that I played on, which was normal for this review, I never felt trapped in a battle that I wasn't ready for, and if I felt like I ever needed to step away to level up, there was always the option to return to the overworld and come back later. The systems here all build upon the concepts found within the genre that this game exists in so well that the gameplay for Unicorn Overlord felt refreshingly modern and engaging. I wanted to give everyone a couple of seconds to avoid story spoilers in this part of the review, as while I don't usually cover the story too in depth, I will be talking about the earlier parts of this game and some general ideas discussed within the story, so if you're sensitive to any of that, that's totally fine. I'm kind of like that sometimes. So please go ahead and skip to the next chapter, or this timestamp. Okay, let's talk story. Unicorn Overlord starts with a bang as young Prince Elaine is sent away from his country of Cornea at the request of his mother, Queen Elenia. She plans on facing the violent uprising of her trusted soldiers head-on, knowing that she will lose her life in the process, but securing Cornea's heir to the throne and her son's life with this sacrifice. In the 10 years that follow, Galerius takes over each of the other 4 nations as well, casting a violent and chaotic shadow over the whole of Feverth. During this same 10 years, Elaine is trained under Joseph, his protector and savior on that tragic night, and has become a formidable fighter and blossoming leader. After his friend Scarlet is kidnapped by Zenorian troops, Elaine steps foot onto the mainland of Cornea once more and begins his ascent as the leader of the rebellion. Thus begins the tale of the Liberation Army, and throughout this tale we get to see what starts out as an annoying thorn in the Empire's side become a force to be reckoned with that challenges Galerius and his total control of the lands. Along the way, players can expect to meet and befriend many people of the different nations of Feverth, who will all join in the battle after working together with Elaine to push back the Empire's control. These recruits can all build relationships with each other via the report system. This allows units who frequently fight together or spend time together in close proximity by sharing meals at the tavern, for instance, the ability to grow closer, unlocking up to 3 cutscenes between them where more about their relationship is revealed. These bits of side story and relationship building are always nice to see in these kind of games, and I think that they did a good job in making them very accessible, as once you unlock or liberate the town that's nearest to that interaction, you can kind of just teleport to the nearest town and walk over to the interaction and it's right there. I also think that the sheer number of them just shows how much the people making this game cared. There's 3 cutscenes between every character that you can unlock, so I think that that's just really awesome to see that they really wanted to flesh out these relationships. While overall the story is pretty well structured, I will admit that it is very predictable at times. It does try to do its best with some of the plot twists, though many of these are pretty basic and you can see them from a mile away. Now, this isn't to say that the story itself is bad. Please hear me, that it's not a bad story. There are a lot of good moments here about working together to make a difference in the world, standing up to the powers that be when they overstep their boundaries. And I mean, like I said before, who doesn't love a good rebellion story? It's just that when the narrative attempts to be shocking or take a turn, it kind of just seems like, yeah, I kind of thought that would happen. What I will say about the ending of this game is that it does a great job of providing payoff for the near 50 hours that I put into my first playthrough, and it was really cool to see the story come to a close where no loose ends were left unexplained. Unicorn Overlord had me hooked from the start with its way of playing on the conventions and mechanics of the tactical or strategy RPG genre and applying its own unique spin on things. The gameplay is really fluid and intricate, and if you love strategizing and sending your troops out into large-scale battles, then this is a game that has that in abundance. The depth of the squad creation, equipment, skill sets, and tactics make for an experience rich in critical thinking and gives ample opportunity to tinker with formations and squads to get the best out of our ragtag rebellion. The presentation is full of beauty and care, and that iconic vanillaware style that many have come to love over the years. With distinct characters and fantasy races set against a backdrop of diverse and beautiful countries broken by the hands of war and oppression, the world of Feverth is one that feels well realized and has a history wanting to be discovered. The sound was solid overall, and other than the few issues that I mentioned earlier, it was a good companion to the visuals. If I had to choose the weakest part of Unicorn Overlord, it would have to be that the narrative doesn't bring anything new or unique to the table, and it can really be easy to see where the story is going. Now, I still found it enjoyable in my time playing, and I would only say this if I had to absolutely choose the weakest part of this game. Once again, I want to emphasize that I'm not saying that the story is bad in any way. I still found it enjoyable in my time playing, and when paired with the stellar and in-depth gameplay mechanics and a solid presentation, the story does tell a succinct and coherent tale that is interesting, if just a tiny bit predictable. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, maybe leave a like and subscribe, as it is the best way to support my channel. Hit the notification bell if you don't want to miss any of my upcoming videos, and if you're interested in seeing the other games I reviewed, click on the playlist on your screen. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Peace.